Hey everyone, welcome back to the So You Shoot Weddings podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Mackenzie Frank.
That's me.
That's me. And I'm Chris Prince. So this week we're going to talk about how to work together. And what I mean by that is photography and videography. People think that we're enemies. We don't have to be. We shouldn't be. And in a lot of cases, we aren't. So we're going to get into all of that, maybe like do's and don'ts of like, you know, what you shouldn't do if you're a videographer, what you shouldn't do if you're a
Proper
photographer.
etiquette.
Yeah. And there's really not even like a handbook of like what you should and shouldn't do. It's just a lot of it's just kind of being respectful of each other, because at the end of the day, we are on the exact same team. I know it doesn't seem like it. I know maybe if you're a photographer and you're listening to this, you're like, I've worked with some videographers and they're a huge pain.
Which isn't wrong.
That's probably true.
But...
Yeah, and that's on them. Or maybe it's the other way around. It's to me, it's all about like, it starts with communication. So let's say that I have heard like a photographer is like a pain to work with. I would probably reach out to them before the wedding. That way I don't have to, that way it's not just sprung on me on the wedding day to where I'm like, oh, like this isn't working. Like this is bad. Because if it costs you the shots you want as a photographer or videographer, then that means it's costing the bride and groom.
Yeah.
So put whatever you have aside and you guys have to work together. I work with Mackenzie. I work with you a couple of times a year, but like I've just worked with her enough to where I kind of know how she works and she kind of knows how I work. So like it's just nice because we don't really get in each other's way. We definitely help each other, because at the end of the day, if we help each other, we're each going to get better shots. So if you go into the wedding day thinking, I hate this photographer or I hate this videographer, that's a bad mindset to go in. Even if you do hate them for whatever reason,
You just gotta let that go.
You gotta put it aside for 8-10 hours or whatever, and you would be surprised. Just swallow your pride and be like, I'm gonna be as nice as possible to this person. It's gonna be better at the end of the night. It's gonna be better when you're editing the photos and you're like, oh, like I'm glad we had that talk with each other before. Like everything's so much better. Trust me. Are you okay over there? You're geeking out.
Just yawning.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What do you have to...
I was trying to hide it.
What do you think about working together?
Yeah, so definitely important. I usually like to know who the videographer is before I shoot the wedding. So I'll just ask, like, if you have video, who is it? If it's Chris, awesome, because I can't even think of one time that, like, you got in my way where I was mad. For instance, this was a couple years ago.
I was mad.
But I had a videographer that I was like, all right, we're going to do the first look. Like, I'm going to be on this side, shooting this way. And during the first look, she was walking out and he was panning across in the background of it happening. So, like, I'm definitely in his shot. And I told him, you know, like, hey, this is going to be the best shot. And just respect who you're working with. And it obviously goes both ways. Like, we are both present and important. Photo's not more important than video, but I feel like a lot of people think that way. Video kind of gets tossed to the back.
We're definitely the new guys in town.
Yeah.
For sure. Just because, I mean, photography for weddings is
like always.
Yeah,
That's a constant.
You're going to have it. There are some weddings where there's not a videographer, and that's fine. I've talked to brides that say they care about video. They don't care about photo. I'm sure there have been plenty of instances where it's the opposite at a wedding I've done. Who knows? But like, at the end of the day, if you're there, they wanted you to be there.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to, you know, have good communication, because our stuff lasts forever, and like, it's not just what we do that day, it's what we edit. And like I said,
the time and effort, like energy and love that goes into it after. Like, a lot of vendors, once they hit the wedding day, they're done. Once we hit the wedding day, yeah, we have our day. We have so much after that. Like, our work has just begun, basically. And
so we owe it to each other, as if you're a photographer or videographer listening, like, call the photographer a month before. Why not? Maybe that's never happened and they're like annoyed that you called them. That's on them. But like, being on the same page before a wedding day is so important. If you want to hop on a Zoom call with maybe them or the bride, if you want to call them, even a text, even just looking at their website, you can learn so much.
Yeah.
The other vendor, like, oh, these people shoot really wide all day. Most of their portfolio are wide shots. Well, maybe if you're a videographer and you see that, shoot more on a telephoto, like so you're not in every one of their
Yeah.
photos. Like maybe that's their style, or vice versa. If you're a videographer and you're on a 35 all day, well, maybe they're going to be in some of your shots. That's just how it goes. So maybe switch to a different focal length. Like one of the first things I ask photographers when I show up to a wedding, whether I've met them or not, I'm always like, what are you going to be shooting on most of the day? And what I mean by that is what focal length.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they give me a weird look, and I'm just like, are you on a 35 all day? Are you on a 35 most of the day? Are you on a zoom lens all day? Are you on an 85 all day? That's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
If, I'm on a 35 all day versus I'm on an 85 all day.
Yeah.
If they're on an 85 all day, I can get a little closer.
Because then, he knows how like close he can get without getting in the shot.
Yeah. To me, it's so easy. What are you shooting on all day? 35.
Yeah. You
cool.
asked that today.
Oh yeah, I did. We had to shoot earlier today. So that is just, I don't know, it's just nice to know because you can learn so much. And obviously respect, like sometimes I used to be like super annoyed when people would shoot on 35s all day because I'm like, oh, that's really wide. But you do that. So
Yeah.
I'm like, but now I'm like, well, that's their style. So that's just what they do. So that's okay. If I shoot on an 85 all day, that's my style.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I do it. I do shoot 85
You do
lot.
a lot of tight, but I like it looks so good.
Yeah, thanks.
I think sorry to
No, go
interrupt.
ahead.
Big thing is keep your eyes open. It sounds silly, but there are so many times where like there's a first dance going on and we kind of like to float around the room. What was that
I'm
face?
laughing because it's just it's so true. People just get in each other's way all the time. And that's fine. If you're a photographer and you shoot 3,000 photos, I'm probably going to be in a couple of them.
Yeah.
Just because I just am. That's a lot of photos and you have multiple cameras probably. But yeah, I don't want to cut you off.
No, you're good. I would just say like if I see Chris moving around, like he's doing a nice pan around them, I'm going to either try to duck behind the couple or run out of the way because I know what he's trying to do. Just know that he's doing his thing, you're doing yours, and just be aware of where they are. Because if I'm just like standing here watching the couple and he's trying to get some nice shots around him, that's not okay. Like he needs his time, I need mine.
But I also, if I did that, I would say, hey, Mackenzie, I'm getting ready to do a big sweeping shot with my gimbal. It's a wide shot. Can you like maybe go over there really quick, or can you maybe just not like step out?
Can you not be in the way for this?
I mean, basically, be nice and respectful about
Yeah.
it. But also, like, if I did that, I would choose a nice time to do it. Maybe after. So I would do that towards the end of the first dance, maybe, or right in the middle, because like maybe you already got your really good shots of the first dance. Don't do it maybe at the beginning or at the end, right before they kiss or something.
Yeah.
Like, especially like if portraits and stuff. Just be vocal about like, hey, I'm gonna go in and get really tight now, and I'm gonna get really close to them on my wide lens. Okay, cool, sounds good.
Yeah.
Like,
just communicate with each other.
Yeah, or if you're like, not yet, hold on, give me another minute. Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's better than just doing it and then having the photographer or videographer mad at you and you not even knowing.
No good.
Yeah, like you don't want to be the guy who is just in all the shots because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Because
or
everyone's
she's
gonna
doing.
know as well.
Yeah.
Like,
and
what the
that
heck
word
is
of
this
mouth
guy
spreads
doing?
quick.
Yeah.
Which it sucks. And I'm sure I've been in plenty of shots that I don't even know about, and they're probably mad at me. Like, it's so hard not to because I mean everyone just shoots.
Yeah.
I don't know how many photos you shoot per wedding, but like you're gonna get some of the other vendor. You're gonna get some of Uncle Johnny in the background, really drunk at a wedding. Like that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
So like, but at the end of the day, to get your important shots, it's nice if you could be on the same page. And I've done plenty of weddings where I've never met the photographer before until the day of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, hey, by the way, I'm going to shoot on this focal length most of the day. What are you on most of the day? Oh, I'm on this. Cool. Thanks. No one's ever asked me that before. Yeah, I asked because I don't want to be in your way all day. But also, you don't want to be like passive in terms of, oh, I'm going to be out of your way all day. It's not even that. That's not even the point. It's because you're both important. So the point is get the shots that you need.
And then
tuck
out,
then, but you can be respectful about it. You can do it in a way that's beneficial to both of you as vendors. So especially if there's like second shooters, I usually shoot alone, but if I bring a second shooter and you bring a second shooter, well, now there's 4 of us instead of 2 of us. So there's just twice as likely to be in each other's shots. But if we tell our second shooters or we tell each other, hey, by the way, like she's on a 35 most of the day, or if you want to get in close, say it. Or if you want to say, hey, like I want to get in close and get this shot, make sure maybe that they're done with that pose or they're done doing that shot and jump in. Like don't just run up and with a camera, oh, I'm going to shoot this now. Like just
And I've had people do that, not recently, but when I first started shooting, I would like set up this whole shot. I was doing my thing. Next thing you know, I see like this other camera coming through. And that's not only distracting to me, but I think the couple, and they're like, whoa, whoa, what's going on? I thought like you were doing your thing. But what I try to do is once I'm done shooting my little set in like a certain spot, I say like, hey, Chris, do you need anything? Or is there something you want to do? And then usually he gets it. But if he wants to add something, like motion that works better with video, he'll just hop in and do it, and then we move on. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, just again, it's pretty simple, but a lot of photographers and videographers just lack general like good communication. They think this person hired me, I'm going to show up and I'm going to shoot it. The wedding day is like the last day that you want to just wing it. Communication is so important. There's a reason why people hire planners and coordinators. There's a reason why a wedding timeline exists. I've done so many weddings where I think everything's going to be perfect. I get the shots. They're right perfect with the timeline, the way it's set up. And maybe a photographer, or, in my case, it's always the photographer because I'm the videographer. Yeah. But like, so I don't want you to think that I'm bad mouthing photographers. I'm the videographer. So I'm only ever working with a photographer. But like if a photographer shows up and says, oh, well, now we're going to do groom prep. Well, I just did that a half hour ago.
Because that was the timeline.
The timeline said that half hour ago. Well, now we're going to be a half hour behind because, that person, whoever it was, didn't go with the timeline. So if they would have taken the time to do a phone call a month ago, they would have known that. Or if they would have taken the time to be like, well, when's the photographer or videographer getting there? That's what I ask a lot too sometimes. I'm like, hey, if they're showing up a half hour before me, I'm just going to show up a little bit early to get that. Because to me, it's like, yeah, you might have me for specific hours, but if I show up 15, 20 minutes early, and it makes the wedding timeline perfect, like we're all on the same page, I'll do it. Like that's not a huge sacrifice to make, and you definitely don't want to get a wedding day behind.
Yeah.
It's just the worst.
I'd rather have standing time than like, okay, so she was supposed to be in her dress 30 minutes ago and she's still getting lashes put on, which happens a lot with getting ready. So same thing with that. I mean, if we can kind of jump into like working with other vendors beyond photo and video, like respect each other as well. Like DJs, some are awesome and like find you if you're going out shooting, like, hey, we're going to do speeches in 5 minutes. That's awesome. I usually try to give my cards so I can like say, hey, if you can't find me, just text me, be like, hey, come out. But some DJs are all right. So our maid of honor, and you're
while you're in the bathroom
eating or something. Yeah, in the bathroom, and you're like, okay, I still have to run and grab my equipment. Like, Chris has your gimbal or whatever, and I have my straps. Like, we can't just jump in and go, especially if we're like during our break time. We just want to be able to give our couple the best with every vendor. We don't want them to complain about anyone. And the way for that to happen is just to respect everyone that you're working with.
And again, that whole thing about the DJ starting toast, maybe while you're going to the bathroom or while you're just, away doing something else. Maybe that's your fault. Maybe it's the DJ's fault. At the end of the day, good communication on both of their parts would have made that not happen. So if I go up to the DJ, which I do constantly throughout the night, and I'm just like, hey, toasts are supposed to start in 20 minutes. How are we doing? Like, we pretty good on time? Do you think we're going to start maybe a little bit earlier or a little bit later? They're usually pretty good with like, DJs tend to be pretty, like, they're people person. Yeah. So like, they're going to say, hey man, we're probably like 10 minutes behind. Cool. That means about a half hour for toasts. So that means in about 20 minutes, I better be ready just because you never know. But also just to avoid things like that, it's literally all communication. That's all it is. Just be willing to make that extra phone call or text, or even just ask the bride one extra question. Hey, like, is the DJ, are we going to do this or this? Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool. Well, now you know. So the more information you have with you before the wedding day, the better you're going to do at shooting that wedding day. Does that make sense?
And yeah, if possible, have their contact information. So day of, if you have a quick question, or if you like I said, if we're during our break time where we're eating dinner, it's just so much easier for everyone if he can just shoot you a text, hey, I need you in 5 minutes, instead of like him running around, leaving his post, trying to find you. Like, that's not really his responsibility.
No.
But it's super nice. Like, we as videographers and photographers love that when they can just throw us a bone and be like, yo, we need you soon. super helpful
For
because
sure.
we deserve a break too. You know, we're working long hours. We have to eat. We have to get off our feet just for a second. But yeah,
I've had like that's happened with like caterers before, where like we're perfect on the timeline, but the caterers are half hour behind.
that happens a lot.
And maybe the caterers thought it was supposed to be half hour later, and maybe in that case the bride said, "Oh, you know, I told them dinner was at 7 or 7:30, but it's actually at 7."
That's a big thing. Try to make sure everyone has the same timeline. Because I shot one wedding, there were 4 timelines floating
Yeah.
around, and I checked in with the bride like maybe a day or two before, and the DJ was like, "That's not what my timeline says.
Yeah,
You're
which-
lucky I'm here." I'm like,
right.
"No, sir, your timeline's wrong."
So, and again, what I would do is, what if I'm helping a bride make a timeline, or maybe the coordinator did with her, the first thing I say to the bride is, make sure everyone has this exact timeline. Because, and keep in mind, your bride is probably overwhelmed. She's been planning for months. She's stressed. Like, she doesn't want to deal with talking to every vendor again and do it. So sometimes I'll say like, hey, if you want, I can talk to the photographer if they have questions about stuff. Or if your DJ has questions about maybe why we want to do this at this time, have them reach out to me. Like, because the less stress on the bride and groom, the better.
Yeah.
So
They don't want to be looking at pieces of paper. That's our job to keep them on track and be like, hey, you know, we have 20 minutes until we got to go. If you have to go to the bathroom, you need water, do that now.
Yeah.
That's our job to keep track of it.
the best offense is a good defense. So
Hey.
just be like prepared, basically. Prepared, good communication, and you go into that wedding. Like I said, if you know your photographer, great. If not, maybe try to get to know them a little bit before the wedding. If not, that's fine.
Grab a beer, grab a coffee,
Right?
even though
Well,
Chris
maybe-
doesn't
yeah,
like either.
And maybe they're super, right? Maybe they're super busy. That's fine. Sometimes I don't have time to talk to people or meet them in person, but like a quick maybe phone call, or even like I said, look on their Facebook, or sorry, not Facebook page, their website. Like you can find out so much just by looking at like a portfolio.
Just starting a simple relationship already makes your day that much easier.
Yeah, and if you get a photographer or videographer calling you, asking you a couple questions about the timeline, and their reason is because, hey, they don't want to show up on the wedding day and it be like, it's a circus. That's good. That tells me, oh, this photographer cares about doing things correctly. They care about getting the shots. They care about the couple. That's good. Like, that's a good thing. So I don't think you can ever be over-prepared when it comes to a wedding. I'm
No.
sorry. I know I've called photographers before, and they're probably just like, dude, what? I've never had a videographer call me. Like, what do you want? That's fine. I don't care. Like, I need to get my information, and we all need to be on the same page. So at the end of the day, a couple is paying thousands of dollars for us to be there. The least I can do is make sure I know exactly what's happening on their wedding day at the exact time. And the least I can do is, like I said, call a DJ or text a DJ
Yeah.
or ask a bride a question about her other vendors and stuff. Like, so yeah, timeline is like a huge thing. Did we go off on a tangent there? Because we're talking about working with photographers and videographers.
A little bit, but I wanted to say, like, we not only want to, like, have the timeline as accurate as possible, like, stick to it for the relaxation of our couple, but a lot of people charge if it runs over. I feel terrible charging someone to stay extra because dinner ran behind. So that's why, like, we try to get you to your ceremony on time, to intros on time. So if everyone's doing their job and doing a good job, you're not paying any extra money, because I would never leave during, like, dances or toasts or anything. But there is a certain point, like, if we're 2 hours over, we got to take care of that.
Yeah, it's nice to leave at 9 when you're supposed to leave at 9.
Yeah.
It
It rarely happens.
It sucks leaving at 10:30 when you're supposed to leave at 9. And the only reason why it was pushed back that far was because, let's say the coordinator or someone thought dances were at this time, but no, they weren't.
So we're just sitting there,
Yeah.
like, waiting.
Now the buffet table is on the dance floor, so we have to wait an extra hour for dinner. That's happened to me before, where I'm like, that's one simple question that should have been asked 6 months
Yeah.
ago. It wasn't, and now we have to stay an hour and a half later, which means I have to work either free for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
or I have to charge the bride and groom for it. That's a lose-lose.
Yeah.
So
we don't want you to pay extra if you
it's
don't
no
have
fun.
to.
And then it's just uncomfortable.
It's awkward too.
And at the end of the day, I guess I get it. Like, it's not all about like us leaving on time. The wedding day is not about us. It's about the couple. But like, they paid us for specific hours, and if it goes on time, that's way more efficient. We most likely got every shot we
Yeah.
wanted, everything was perfect because it was by the timeline, which is how we planned it going into the day.
I would say we never leave. Like, I've never left, and I'm sure you've never left before, like, some important things were supposed to happen. Like, let's say you're supposed to dance with your dad. We're not going to be like, 9 o'clock, we're out of here. You know, we're going to stay for that. And, I mean, I usually stay 15, 30 minutes after every wedding, just in case. That's when the party, like, really starts to get good. But, yeah, just try to keep your
don't be,
time.
and I know people who've done it. Don't be the photographer or videographer who look at their watch, 9:30 later, right in the middle of a toast or something, which that's super rare. I think I've seen it once or twice, but just like, come on, that's stay and get the important part, and then you can go.
Yeah.
Like, don't,
Once you hit open dancing, then you can be like, hey, I was supposed to leave half an hour ago. Do you want me to stay or do you want me to leave? And unfortunately, like, it's awkward talking about that because I don't want to be like, all right, so you have to pay me to stay here. But there is a point in time where, like, we are getting tired. We want to go home. We want to back up our stuff and go to bed because sometimes we have double wedding weekends where we got to do the whole thing again and we want to be well rested for the next couple.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, if you're working with another vendor, basically if you're working with a photographer or if you're working with a videographer, don't go into the day being like, ugh, videographers, ugh, or like, ugh, photographers, ugh, they're the worst. No matter what you've heard, I've heard things about photographers and I've showed up and they were amazing. And I was like, oh, because someone probably had a bad deal, had a bad time with them.
Or a bad attitude
right?
going
or maybe,
it.
you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe the videographer who hated that photographer and said all these things, maybe the videographer was the problem, or vice versa. You never know
until you work.
Right. So don't have any preconceived notions. I know that's super easy. It's easier said than done, but like, don't worry about that. Just show up. You're on the same team, even though photo and video are different. They're two sides to the same coin, I always say, and you're there for a reason. And you'll be surprised. And it's nice to work with people over and over again because you're like, oh, you know what? You did a really good job and you're easy to work with.
Yeah.
I'd love to work with you again. Great. You just built a client relationship.
It's like synchronized swimming. I feel like we're like, yes, we haven't worked together a ton, but enough to where like we just dodge and weave and like we're good with working with each other. Plus, your couples love to know that you work together.
Yeah, it's nice.
They'll be like, oh yeah, like,
they really like that.
Chris Prince, he's my videographer. I'm like, sick. Okay, I know how he works. Like, he's good, blah, blah, blah. And
it's one less thing for the couple to stress about.
They're like, cool. They already work together and they know each other.
Which is a better day for you because they're happier already.
Happy couples, happy vendors.
Just one less thing. And if I find out, oh, Mackenzie's shooting that wedding, awesome. It's one less thing to stress about.
Gonna be a good day.
Even though I try not to stress about that stuff anyway, but like, do a good job. Communicate. It's the number one thing.
Communication.
And then it's going to take care of itself. Just communicate. And I think that's it for this week. So
yep,
if you have any questions, just DM us, hit us up. And we have a website coming and all that stuff. Hopefully we've already dropped it by this point. And then, check us out on soyoushootweddings.podbean.com. And we'll see you guys next week.